the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, and welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. So today I am sitting down with an MS warrior from the state of Indiana, originally from the state of Michigan, by the way, go blue. But from the state of Indiana, I am talking to Braden. How are you doing today, Braden?
Doing all right, Michigan Man. How are you doing? I
am doing good. So, Braden, you were diagnosed with MS just last year. Very interesting. I'm so excited that I'm getting to talk to somebody that is newly diagnosed that wants to talk about their disease. So kind of take us down the path of how you got diagnosed, what your symptoms were, and everything that happened up until that point.
Yeah. So in September of 2024, I was in a car accident that kind of triggered this whole MS diagnosis journey. After the accident, for the following few days, I started developing numbness and tingling in my feet and my legs. I had issues with my left hand with dexterity and functionality, balance and coordination issues, and then some vision problems with my left eye where my peripheral vision on the left side was just blurry. I was getting these headaches, and it was hard for me to track motion with my eyes.
Wow.
So I ended up it was really scary. Yeah. I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was like something from the car accident itself, but never would have guessed it would be MS.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had no symptoms up until this point and before in your life. You never had anything that you looking back at now, like with your eyes or anything, like 5 years ago, you never had anything that happened with your vision to like give you any kind of indication that something was going on. This was the first time that anything's ever happened.
Yeah, first time. Up until this point, I've been relatively healthy. I did have cancer at one point, but that was just a small tumor, rare sarcoma, but never had any of these other kind of symptoms before. It was a huge shock to lose so much functionality so quickly.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, too, because I was in a car accident when I was around 23 years old, right after I graduated from college. And I had a doctor come into my room when I was in the ER. My head went through a windshield. And they were checking, they did an MRI to see if I had any kind of trauma to my head. And, and this is like right after I'm done, I just get done playing football at the University of Michigan. So I'm in great shape and I'm sitting in this hospital room and this doctor comes in and tells me, hey, your head came back okay with, as far as the trauma goes, but just a heads up, there's some white matter on your brain MRI that could be signs of MS. You might want to keep an eye on that and follow up with a neurologist. And I kind of ignored that, but that was, I don't think that the car accident had anything to do with it, but that was actually the first time that MS was even mentioned to me. And it was all because of a car accident. It's crazy how trauma seems to bring this disease out with a lot of the warriors that I have spoken to.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience with the other warriors I've spoken to, that trauma seems to be a big trigger for bringing this disease out.
Yeah.
And when I went back to the hospital to get an MRI, they did one of my brain and spine with and without contrast. And my brain lit up like a Christmas tree at that time.
Wow.
It was showing active demyelination happening. And I was admitted to the hospital for 3 days to receive high-dose steroids through an IV. Mm-hmm. And it was a really shocking experience because, you know, you're there in the ER for 8-10 hours. You get this MRI done. And that experience in itself is tough. Yeah. And being in that machine that long, experiencing the symptoms I was having too, with all this pins and needles and numbness, and like you got to sit still, and it just felt like an eternity.
Yeah.
And then the doctor to come in and say, "Hey, you've got MS."
Yeah.
And then you up to an IV, and then you're just like left in a room, like by yourself for like pretty much 23 hours of the day. And if you're lucky, you see a doctor, you know, 15, 20 minutes of that day.
Wow. And being that you're in Indiana, you're all your family's back in Michigan, so you're dealing with this disease diagnosis pretty much all on your own. You didn't have anybody there to lean on. That had to be a hard thing to go through, that initial diagnosis, Braden.
Yeah, it was really hard because I had just moved to Indiana in June. So I've only been here, you know, at this point now, 7 months. And so I was very grateful for my two friends that I do have here that I moved with from the East Coast. You know, they came and visited me and stuff, but I was there alone a lot. And, you know, anybody who's been on, you know, the high dose of a steroid knows that it messes with your head, and you have all these emotions on top of, you know, receiving a life-changing diagnosis. And
yeah,
it really took a toll on my mental health. And if anything, like I feel like that experience was one of the harder things of the diagnosis, was just being there alone, mm-hmm. feeling the side effects of the steroids and trying to grapple with this new reality.
Yeah. Braden, I completely agree with you, and I've been doing this for 27 years, and I can tell you that after 27 years, the physical part is hard, but it's doable. The mental part is way harder than the physical part to me, because that's a 24/7, 365 days of battle that you're going to have with yourself and all the things that this disease does to you and makes you think. And that's the hardest part. And I think the sooner you realize that and address it, the better you're going to be with this disease. Because I made the mistake of not addressing it for probably 10 or 15 years into my diagnosis, which was a huge mistake. But I'm glad that being so early that you do recognize that and you're attacking that right now instead of later. That's a great thing, Braden.
Thank you. Mental health has always been really important to me, and you know, something that I've battled with my entire life, with anxiety and depression. And you know, this was a big wake up call, and you have no choice but to either attack it head on or be swallowed by it. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of MS warriors and the, you know, other chronically ill spoonies deal with on a daily basis, is facing these emotional depths that most people don't. And it can be a source of strength, or it could swallow you whole. And it's a personal choice, and it's a hard one.
Yeah.
And it's a constant battle.
Yeah, it is a constant battle. And I can tell you that even though, you know, you think you got control of it right now, as I did many times in my 27 years, but you really have to stay on top of it, because this disease, like just when you think that you're okay, I'm doing good, I'm doing great, MS throws you a curveball and smacks you and knocks you down, and that just plays a toll on your mind. And it's just so important to stay on top of your mental health with this disease. I can't express that enough, how important it is.
Yeah, I think mindset and mental health goes a really long way with battling this disease, and it plays into, this is a disease of the central nervous system. Mm-hmm. And when you're in an activated state or in that flight or fight mode, your nervous system is firing, it's going crazy, it's creating inflammation, and that feeds right back into the disease, and it can easily spiral quickly out of control.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just sneaks right up on you. You think you'll have a couple great days in a row, and then a bad day happens, and it's so easy to get sucked right back into that kind of pit of despair of oh my gosh, I thought I was doing okay, and is this going to be how I'm always going to be now? And
yeah,
it's easy to get trapped in those moments.
Yeah, no doubt. So after your diagnosis, and being that you're in Indiana and you weren't around your family, how did your family support you, being that they were in other states? And take us through that, how that all happened.
Yeah. I've got two amazing younger brothers that are constantly checking in on me and talking to me and supporting me and meeting me where I was at. Some people want to approach this and be like, oh, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And that positivity, they mean well, but mm-hmm. It's also that's not where I'm at right now. I just need you to listen and hear me out and understand that I'm really struggling right now. And I just need more of someone just to kind of be there.
Yeah.
To hear it and to listen and to accept it.
Yeah.
I'm also really grateful that my mom, was diagnosed with MS 20 years ago. And so she has a lot of experience with it and was able to talk to me and mm-hmm. really understands what I was going through and knows, how much this disease just sucks.
Yeah.
And, really grateful for her perspective and just listening and being there.
Yeah. And that is so important to have somebody to lean on. And, whether it's even because I know that, some people don't have great relationships with their family, even if it's a friend. It's just so important for your mental health to be able to have somebody to talk to. And even if they don't fully understand what it's like to have it, just to listen to you, to be there for you. That's just such an important part of battling this disease.
Yeah, it really is. I'm really grateful. I've got this core group of friends that have formed over the last 10 years from my time in DC. Two of them are living here now in Indiana, and the other two are still back in DC. But everything from, the pandemic to my cancer, they have been there for me through and through.
That's awesome.
I can always lean on them, and they hear me out. They support me. They love me, accept me for who I am. And, I call them my chosen family. And it's really wonderful to have them in my life too.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And you're such a young guy too, being in your 30s, and it's just so important to have that outside connection, just for somebody to lean on. I have a group of friends that I have the same thing with. We've known each other for pretty much our whole lives, and I can lean on them and just talk to them, and they get it. They know how I was before I was diagnosed, and I'm not. They treat me like I'm the same person, and I appreciate that a lot, because a lot of times you don't get treated the same way after you get diagnosed with this disease.
Yeah, that's been challenging too. They have done a wonderful job of treating me like the same person, going back to work and sharing my diagnosis with coworkers and stuff has been a unique experience, because some people, it's really hard for them to wrap their head around it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They either look at you with pity and sadness, or some people have backed away, and it's like, I'm not contagious or anything. It's not like that kind of disease,
Right.
You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's funny you use the word pity, because I've actually have said to people before, I don't want your pity. I'd rather just have your understanding. I don't need you to feel sorry for me. I just want you to understand how difficult it is to go through life with a chronic disease.
Yeah. And I don't really understand it either. The pity, or some people are oh, you're talking about it too much. You're just trying to get attention. And it's just no, I really just want to be understood and accepted.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you said that your job, your coworkers and all that know that you have MS. And I know a lot of people, when they get that diagnosis, they're deathly afraid to tell their employer, because they don't want to lose their job. That did not concern you?
No, it concerned me. It did. But I'm also I've always kind of been an open book. And I think I do that because I like to, in my mind, or what I'm telling myself is creating a safe space just to be open. And if I want a safe space, then I should also help build that safe space.
Yeah.
And so I don't really have any hold up or pause about just being open about it. If I'm going to lose my job because I have MS, then I'm going to find another job,
Yeah.
That's just how I've always kind of been. And it's a reflection of them and not me.
Yeah.
I
love that, Braden. Like I said, I'll go back to my experience. When I got diagnosed at 27, I was 2 years into my career with the state of Ohio, and I ended up working 20 years there. I didn't tell anybody that I was diagnosed for probably 10 years. I was able to hide it that long because, my symptoms, you really couldn't tell that I had MS, but I was really afraid to tell my employer just because of fear of retaliation. And I think a lot of people have that fear. And how did your employer react to that when you basically, came right in and said, hey, I got MS, I just got diagnosed, I just want everybody to know. How was the response from that employer?
Because of the circumstances with the car accident and everything, it kind of all just happened, and I was keeping them informed throughout the journey. And, I was grateful that because I hadn't worked a full year yet, I didn't qualify for FMLA. They were able to grant me a leave of absence so that my job would still be there.
That is so awesome.
And so I ended up taking 6 weeks off of work to, between the hospital, physical therapy, and occupational therapy, and getting to a place where I felt comfortable and able to return to work in a way that, wouldn't set me back and would be, beneficial for everybody, that I could perform my job duties and all of that.
Yeah.
They've been really good about it. And I'm really grateful that I was able to keep my health insurance through that whole period as well, because honestly, that was my biggest fear.
Yeah.
Was losing coverage as I'm going through this diagnosis and having to get testing done and see all these different doctors, and the physical therapy and occupational therapy were so helpful to getting me back to a baseline where, I feel so much better than I did and more functional than I did, compared to, it's only been a few months, but it feels like a lifetime at this point. But I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm blown away. For your employer to keep you on, at that short of a period of time, that's awesome that they did that. I mean, my hat is tipped to them for keeping you employed. That's so awesome. So let's talk about relationships. So
Yeah.
are you married, or are you dating anybody, or tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm currently single. I've been struggling with this whole dating with a chronic illness thing. I was seeing somebody as I was going through this kind of diagnosis journey. And when I shared the news with her, then she just disappeared on me. Wow. And it was right before Thanksgiving, and shared my diagnosis, and she, ghosted, as they say. And it was shocking.
Yeah.
And
I
didn't think that she was.
That's another sad reality of having a chronic disease is just, first I want to say the good thing is, Braden, is that you weren't married and this happened. Because I see that it happens so much with people that are married, if they weren't diagnosed before they were married and they get married and they get diagnosed, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that their spouse ends up bailing on them. And, and that's the hard thing with relationships in a chronic disease, is that you gotta, it's hard to find somebody that accepts it and understands it and is willing to be there for you. And it's just a hard thing to do. I know I've had to do it. It's just a hard thing to do with the chronic disease.
Yeah. It's, some people are more capable than others and have more emotional maturity to understand the depths and the nuances that come with this. It's also really hard to think that, somebody that you care about so deeply will just see you as that diagnosis and nothing else. And
yeah,
it's a hard thing to wrap your brain and heart around when you experience that kind of rejection.
Yeah, and it really, and that's another mental health thing, because it's something that it's a rejection, and now you're thinking in your head, okay, I'm being rejected because of this disease. This is why this relationship failed, because of multiple sclerosis. And it's just like a continuing loop in your head, beating yourself up that I got this disease, and I'm never going to be able to find somebody that's going to accept it and get married.
Yeah. And you're rejected for something that's essentially that's out of your control,
Yeah.
None of us choose to have multiple sclerosis. It's not like
I didn't
decisions.
I didn't sign up for it.
Yep. And, sometimes in relationships, they end or you're rejected because of, choices that you're making. And it's like, I didn't make this choice. And right. If I had the choice, I wouldn't have this disease. None of us would.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, so it's really hard to grapple with that and to think, this is like my first dating experience with MS, and like, it gives me a lot of pause and apprehension to like want to put myself out there again.
Yeah.
To, hopefully find a life partner.
Yeah. I completely understand where you're coming from. I went through a divorce. I was married for 15 years, and I'm not saying that the MS was the cause of the divorce, because, I'm not going to blame my divorce on a disease. But did the MS come into play a little bit? I find it hard to believe that it didn't. But it's hard. I didn't give up after that, though. I was 45 years old, so I was probably another 10 years older than you. And, I'm sitting there going, I don't want to go through life the rest of my life alone. so I ended up going on a dating app at the time back in 2011, 2012. And, and even that was like an experience, because I'm already 15, 17 years into this disease. And I'm like going, who the hell's going to want to go out with me? And, and it was an experience. I had women that actually I met in a bar, that, I told them I had MS. They got up and walked out on me, after I told them I had MS. I'm like, okay, well, nice meeting you. People just, it is tough, but it is not impossible. I met my wife on a dating app, and when I first met her, I told her I had MS, and she looked at me and said, "So what?" And that was like as soon as I heard her say that, I'm like, hey, I definitely want to get to know this girl because she just said the words that I want to hear. I don't care you have a disease. They are out there, buddy. They are out there. You will find one.
Yeah, I think so too. It's I've struggled with this rejection because it's so much like not how I would treat somebody else.
Yeah.
And, and I know there's more people out there like me than like her. And it's just, I really think it comes down to emotional maturity and being able to see people more than a diagnosis. And those of us with MS and those of us that are chronically ill, like we're almost forced to mature emotionally by everything that we're faced with.
Yeah.
We face these depths of emotions on a 24-hour daily basis.
Yeah.
And grapple with a lot of heavy stuff. And we need a partner that can meet us at those depths and understand us and accept us as well.
Yeah. You are so dead on. And that is, I wish people just took the time to try to understand the disease before making judgments on the disease, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that's been a big part of why I want to be so open talking about my journey, is bringing more understanding and clarity to people out there. And I've been really grateful that, I've jumped on TikTok and started making videos and have thousands of followers now that are curious about the disease, asking questions. I'm also connecting with other people. That really helps, finding that sense of community in all of this can be such a game changer for your mental health and mindset, that like, you're not alone. No. Other people are having these feelings too, and you find strength in each other to get through some of the really hard moments of it all.
Yeah. Amen, man. That is so well put, Braden. I can't tell you how much just getting because I was never on social media up until last January is when I first because to me social media was a stress before I started on it. But my daughter actually talked me into doing the TikTok thing. And since I've been on there, I'm over 1,000 followers, and the community on TikTok and even on there's Facebook communities, but there are so many communities out there that are of other warriors that are just like us. They, when we talk about something, we talk about it to somebody that completely understands what you're talking about, and that makes you feel good too, knowing that you're talking to somebody that gets it.
Feeling understood in all of this and like really helps, because it can be really lonely. And part of that too with MS is, they call it the snowflake disease because it affects everybody so individually, and no two people are the same, but there are these commonalities that we all experience. And so like finding strength and bonds within all of that really, really helps. Sometimes you just need to like bitch about how bad the fatigue is. And that's one thing that, some people who don't have this disease don't really understand. they're like, oh, you're just a little tired. Go take a nap. It's going to be okay. Yeah. It's like, no, MS fatigue, chronic illness fatigue it's awful. Yeah. I describe it as like, I'm a big sci-fi nerd, like being on another planet where the gravity is just so much more intense. So you just feel so heavy. Every motion takes so much energy, and that fatigue, in just my, few months of dealing with it, it sneaks up on me like out of nowhere. And it's really hard to deal with when you're feeling normal or you're feeling fine, you're having a good day, and then all of a sudden something triggers it, and it's just like every bit of energy is just sucked right out of you.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as taking a hot shower, or if it's hot out, or if it's cold out. It could be something so small that, other people, that it doesn't bother normal people, atypical person, but it really affects us, and it could really fatigue us, and it just wipes us out. And people don't understand that, but it's a constant battle trying to get the people to understand that.
Yeah, it's it's not, we're not being lazy, or like we're not choosing. We're not making some choice to be like, oh, I just don't want to do that activity or do that thing. It's like physically I can't. And the more sometimes you push through it, the worse it gets. And I've been struggling with where are my limits now, and what are like the indicators that like I'm getting to that point.
Yeah.
And, I want to get to a point where, I'm not triggering it. I'm recognizing some like early signals in my body of like, oh, I'm getting close, or, I'll try to be preemptive about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like want to continue to be physical and to not lose, I guess, more of my abilities because I'm afraid to push myself.
Yeah.
I think there is a big part of like, if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing. And the brain is a really powerful thing where like it can form new pathways. And I've, in just this time going through the physical therapy and occupational therapy, I've regained so much of my strength and dexterity in my left hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a musician. I played guitar since I was 12 years old. And after the accident, couldn't hold a chord shape,
Yeah.
It was devastating because music has always been my emotional outlet, a way for me to express myself. And I'm getting back to a point now where like I'm playing again, and it's a struggle. It's kind of then like relearning it all over again.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to like give up on that and just accept like I'm never going to play the guitar again.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to keep trying, and figure this out.
Yeah. Because you can't quit. I mean, and that is just, I love your attitude, Braden. For being so newly diagnosed, it's almost like I'm talking to somebody that's had this disease for 15 years. And I mean, I know that there's fear, but I can't tell. Everything that you say is just like, man, you got it, Braden. You got this. Your mentality on the way that you're attacking this disease is just, it's awesome. I was nowhere close to where you are right now in 6 months into my disease. And you need to pat yourself on the back for that, because that is freaking awesome that you handled that diagnosis so well at 6 months ago.
Yeah. I kind of surprise myself sometimes. And it's weird I also like to think about this diagnosis in a weird way as a blessing, because I've had this huge shift in my mindset since then. And it's almost like, I'm not sure how to put it. I sound like I've skipped all the stages of grief and like I'm just magically at acceptance because I'm not there. I still get angry. I have a ton of anxiety about the future, but I'm trying really hard to not let myself wallow in those moments or like let those consume me.
Yeah.
They, I like to think of them as waves, and those waves do crash over me. But then I'm going to ride that wave out and remember that I can get through this. And I found like this new inner strength from this diagnosis and almost like a sense of purpose where not only do I want to share my story and share my journey with this, but like ultimately want to help other people in those moments too.
Yeah.
And
just Braden, you're blowing me away at just so how newly diagnosed you are and the mentality you have. I'm glad that I got to meet you. I know when I started watching your videos, I was like, oh my God, and this guy's like brand new into this diagnosis. And, and you put videos out where you're struggling and I'll message you and be like, hey, you got this. But you're so honest. You're an open book. I love that about you. And you are just a complete warrior with this disease. And if there is anything that you could tell somebody that's in the same boat as you, like they're just diagnosed, if there's any kind of message that you can give to somebody that is in the same boat as you, what would that be?
I would say, more than anything, you've got to be an advocate for your own health and, reach out to the doctors, get the testing done. Don't wait and sit on symptoms or questions. Like, if anything, for me, not having the answer to something really bothers me. And so I am digging for those answers. I'm trying to find those truths and, be that advocate for yourself. Yeah. And especially with American healthcare, the doctors aren't going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid because there's so many other warriors out there that if you go looking for just the tiniest bit of support, like even doing a Google search for support groups, things are going to pop up, and connecting with people and talking about this disease with others who are experiencing it too helps so much.
Yeah.
And just don't give up on yourself. It's an awful disease. None of us asked for this, but there is community out there and there is support out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen, Braden. I love what you're saying. Don't ever feel like you are alone with this disease. I love that there are always people out there that understand this. Other people like me, 27 years or 5 years or 10 years, we're out there, and we get it. And I love that you're saying to reach out and get that help. I totally agree with you 100%. I really want to thank you for joining me, Braden. Like I said, another MS Warrior friend that I have made. I got you in my cell phone. I'm sure we'll stay in contact with each other. I think you're a warrior. I love your attitude, and I would love to have you on again as a guest, just to kind of continue with your journey being so new. I would love to have you on again, another 6 months or a year down the road, just to see where you're going, how you're doing with it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I would love to be on again and keep sharing my journey.
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is so important in raising awareness and building community and sharing other people's journeys along the way. Whether it's newly diagnosed or decades in, we all can learn from each other and lean on each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Braden. Yeah, that's all I want to do. I want to help people. I'm not a doctor, and my MS, the way I've attacked my MS isn't going to be the same as the way that you're going to attack it. But, if something that I do can help you, or if something that you do can help me, I'm all for helping each other.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So this is MS Michigan Man 64. I'm going to start wrapping this up. Please follow, share the podcast. And this is MS Michigan Man 64. I am out until the next episode. You all have a great day.